Picture three people. Same job, same £50,000 salary. A simple online mortgage calculator tells each of them they could borrow around £225,000. With a 10% deposit, that appears to mean a £250,000 home. Simple, right? But the first person has £30,000 saved, no monthly debt payments, and stable employment. They could be in a position to buy now. The second person has a £350 a month car finance payment, student loan deductions, and less money left over at the end of each month. Their lender may offer them far less than that £225,000, or decide the mortgage is not affordable for them. And the third person earns exactly the same £50,000, has the same £30,000 saved, but lives somewhere the average home costs more than double their budget. Same salary, three completely different buying realities. That is the problem with most "how much house can I afford" videos. They take your salary, multiply it by a number, and stop there. In this video, we are going further. I'm going to show you what different UK salaries could mean for your buying budget in 2026, but also the three limits that really decide what you can buy. What a lender may be willing to lend you, the cash you actually need before completion, and the monthly cost you still need to live with after you get the keys. Because the mortgage you are approved for is not always the mortgage you can comfortably afford. Quick note before we start. These are educational illustrations, not mortgage offers or financial advice. Every lender, location, deposit, and personal situation is different. Let's get into it. Limit 1. Your salary is only the starting point. The number you have probably heard before is 4.5 times your income. It is a common mortgage rule of thumb. Take your gross annual salary, multiply it by around 4.5, and that gives you a rough upper-end illustration of what you might borrow. But it is not a promise. Some buyers may be offered less. Some may qualify for more. It depends on your regular spending, debt repayments, dependents, employment type, credit history, deposit, and the lender you use. So treat this as a starting point, not permission to start shopping at the maximum number. Here is what the salary ladder looks like. Those monthly figures use a 25-year repayment mortgage at 4.2%. And immediately, you can see why salary is only half of the picture. At £50,000, a rough 4.5 times model suggests a £225,000 mortgage. That sounds substantial. But it only translates into a £250,000 property if you have a £25,000 deposit ready too. And even then, you have not yet paid a solicitor, booked a survey, moved your belongings, or paid a single council tax bill. So salary gives you your first limit, possible borrowing power. But the next limit is where people start discovering the gap between a mortgage number and a property number. Limit 2. Your deposit is not just savings. Your salary usually sets the rough size of the mortgage. Your deposit decides how much property that mortgage can actually reach. Let's stay with the £50,000 buyer. Their illustrative mortgage is £225,000. Now watch what happens when the deposit changes. With a 5% deposit, that £225,000 mortgage gets you a property worth around £236,800. With a 10% deposit, it gets you a £250,000 property. With a 20% deposit, the exact same £225,000 mortgage reaches a property worth around £281,250. Same salary, same mortgage. A completely different property search. That is why a deposit is not just a box you tick before applying. It changes the kind of property you can target, the loan-to-value ratio you have, and potentially the mortgage rates available to you. But here is the thing most buyers do not fully appreciate until they are already close to buying. The deposit is not the real cash target. If you think you need £25,000 to buy a £250,000 home, you are probably underestimating the number. And this is the third limit, the one that catches people out. Limit 3, the real cash gap. For a first-time buyer purchasing a £250,000 property in England or Northern Ireland, a 10% deposit is £25,000. The good news is that an eligible first-time buyer would pay no stamp duty land tax at that price. But the deposit is not the end of the bill. You may still have solicitor and conveyancing costs, searches and land registry costs, a survey, a mortgage valuation if your lender charges for one, mortgage product or arrangement fees, removals, and the boring but real cost of turning an empty property into somewhere you can actually live. Legal and conveyancing fees are often around £2,000, including VAT plus searches. A survey may cost roughly £400 to £1,500, depending on the level and the property. Mortgage fees may be nothing, or they may be well into four figures, and a removal service can quickly add hundreds more. You will not necessarily pay the highest number for every category, but a sensible planning target is at least £5,000 on top of your deposit, and potentially more. So for our £250,000 home, the real target is not £25,000. It is closer to £30,000 before furniture, repairs, or your first unexpected problem. And that changes the question. It is not, can I save a deposit? It is, can I build a deposit, a completion cost buffer, and still have emergency money left afterwards? That is a much safer way to think about buying. A quick caveat: property taxes differ across the UK. The stamp duty example is for England and Northern Ireland. Scotland uses LBTT and Wales uses LTT, so always check the current rules for the nation where you are buying. Now let's return to that £50,000 buyer. A £225,000 mortgage over 25 years at 4.2% is about £1,213 a month. That might sound manageable, or it might sound terrifying. It depends on your circumstances. But either way, it is not your full housing cost. You still need to allow for council tax, buildings insurance, utilities, maintenance, possible service charges if you buy a flat, commuting costs, and the inevitable things that go wrong when you own the building rather than renting it. Your mortgage payment is not your housing cost. It is the biggest line on a much longer bill. And there is another test worth running before you decide your maximum budget. What happens when your fixed deal ends? This is not a forecast, it is simply a resilience test. At 6.5%, the same £225,000 mortgage would cost around £1,519 a month. That is about £306 more per month, nearly £3,700 more per year. Before you buy, take your expected mortgage payment and add £300 to £500. Could you still pay it? Could you still save? Could you deal with a broken boiler, a job change, a child, a car repair, or the cost of simply living your life? If the answer is no, then the lender's maximum is not your comfortable maximum. And your comfortable maximum is the number that matters. Now we need to talk about the part of buying a home that a salary calculator cannot solve: where you live. At £50,000, our model gives you a £250,000 property budget. As of May 2026, the average UK house price was around £271,000. So a £250,000 budget sits just below the national average. But that national number hides a huge regional difference. In England, the average was around £292,000. In Wales, around £215,000. In Scotland, around £196,000. And across London, the average house price was around £545,000. So on a £50,000 salary, a £250,000 budget may be workable in many parts of Wales and Scotland. It is close to the UK average, it sits below England's average, and in London, it is less than half the average property price. That does not mean buying is impossible in a more expensive region. It means you may need to compromise on location, property type, size, deposit, timeline, or buy with a partner. Two people on the same salary can be playing completely different games depending on the local market. And that is not a failure of budgeting. It is the reality of the UK housing market. Buying with a partner can change the maths significantly. Imagine two people earning £40,000 each. Their combined income is £80,000. At 4.5 times income, that creates an illustrative £360,000 mortgage. With a 10% deposit, that points to a £400,000 home. Their monthly mortgage payment at 4.2% over 25 years would be about £1,940. That is a far stronger buying position than either person purchasing alone. But it is not a magic solution. The deposit is now £40,000. The mortgage commitment is nearly £2,000 every month. And both buyers are jointly responsible for the debt. Buying together can increase your options, but it also creates a bigger shared financial commitment. So the conversation needs to be about more than just whether the lender says yes. So, if you're trying to work out what you can genuinely afford, here is the order I would use. First, start with a monthly payment you can live with, not a mortgage maximum a lender may offer. Second, work backwards from that payment to a mortgage size. Third, set a deposit target, then add a separate buying cost buffer of at least £5,000. Fourth, check property prices in your actual target area. The UK average is interesting, but it is not where you're trying to buy. Fifth, run a resilience test. Add £300 to £500 to your expected mortgage payment. If that breaks your budget, reduce your target now, not after you are already emotionally attached to a property. And if you are still building your deposit, look into whether a lifetime ISA makes sense for you. It can add a 25% government bonus on up to £4,000 of contributions each tax year. That is up to £1,000 extra annually. But the rules matter. For a qualifying first home purchase, the property must cost £450,000 or less. The account must have been open for at least 12 months. And non-qualifying withdrawals generally face a 25% charge. So use it deliberately, not just because somebody online said free money. Here is the big takeaway. The house a lender may allow you to borrow for is not necessarily the house you can safely afford. Your salary affects borrowing power. Your deposit affects the property price you can reach. Your cash buffer determines whether you are actually ready to complete. And your monthly budget determines whether owning that home improves your life or just turns you into someone who is technically a homeowner but permanently stressed. The right house budget is not the highest number you can get approved for. It is the one that still leaves room to save, handle repairs, and sleep at night when your fixed deal ends.
If this has made you realise your buying budget might be tighter than you thought, watch my video next. Renting is not dead money. The UK buying versus renting truth. Because buying is not automatically better just because you can technically make the numbers work.